Shabbat Shalom. A major theme in Jewish law is categorizing, creating distinctions and defining where various aspects of life belong. A perfect example of this is the Havdalah prayer that we recite each week at the conclusion of Shabbat, in which we praise God. We praise God who distinguishes between sacred and profane, God who distinguishes between light and darkness, God who distinguishes between Israel and other people of the world, and God who distinguishes between the first 6 days and the seventh day of the week. And categorizing is also a central theme in this week's parasha, Tazria Metzorah, which is concerned with aspects of personal purity and the impact that physical irregularities and afflictions have on one's purity and therefore on one's ritual readiness. Interestingly, in this age of COVID-19 and quarantine, the Torah reading this week teaches that one who is symptomatic needs to conduct a special test and quarantine themselves for 7 days. After 7 days, if they're still symptomatic, or if another test is inconclusive, they need to quarantine themselves for another 7 days until the test can be confirmed or until they are symptom-free. They continue to quarantine themselves. I kid you not. This is in this week's Torah reading. In any case, back to the categories. Sacred, profane, light and dark, Israel and other people, even the purity tests, they don't really allow for much of a gray area. On the contrary, as we've seen, it's all about avoiding the gray area or the uncertain space between black and white in order to achieve clear definitions and understandings. Clarity, a sense of knowing for sure. So my guess is that some of you might be thinking, would that modern contemporary life were quite that simple? Even though we live in a very polarized age where black or white has made quite the comeback, in reality, most of us don't live our lives on the edges, on the fringes. Rather, we generally live in the space that occupies the vast middle ground, in which we take numerous options and considerations into account and we strive to accomplish balance. In fact, postmodern philosophy encourages us to dismiss grand theories and ideologies and instead to embrace a diverse set of approaches, a diverse variety of approaches. This conceptual framework has influenced the arts, architecture, it's even influenced our understanding of truth. For it's commonly accepted that truth itself no longer exists as a discrete category, but rather that there are many truths. There's your truth, that which you experience to be true, and there's my truth, that which I experience to be true. There's someone else's truth, and none of these is more true or valuable than the other. So much so that uncertainty is increasingly honored, because it is such an authentic and honest state that we find ourselves in. To some, this validation of uncertainty might come as a relief. To others, it might sound like an absolute nightmare, what we wouldn't only do for some clarity, for yes or no instead of maybe. And especially in times of crisis, it's very common for people to turn to leaders who provide clarity. You might remember the presidential campaign of John Kerry. He was a weak candidate for a number of reasons, but there was one thing in particular that many people experienced as a weakness of his that was actually one of the few things that I actually quite liked about him. Often, when people would ask John Kerry complicated questions, he wouldn't give a bite-sized, digestible answer. Instead, his answers were long and complicated, exploring different options and possibilities before eventually arriving at a bottom line. That doesn't work well in politics. It works for me, but not in politics. In any case, these categories, yes, no, black, white, pure, impure, holy, profane, light or dark, I think that this attempt at finding solutions of clear categories in Jewish tradition is exactly what has become a problem in the experience of many Jews today. First, many Jews would say, it's not that simple. It's more complicated than clear, distinct categories allow for. Second, I suspect that even more Jews would say, I don't want to be told what the options are. I want to work them out for myself. I want to decide what my options are. Autonomy is indeed a hallmark of our society, and we've learned to apply it to Judaism too. What's important to me in this moment is to acknowledge that there are certain categories that we should take seriously, and we need to make some choices and decisions, especially in these times. I think we need to look at the fact that being part of the human family means that we have certain responsibilities to others in our role as family member. More specifically, we are part of the Jewish family. The Jewish story, whether you accept it as literal truth or metaphorical truth, it's our story of origin. It tells us where we come from, and everyone needs to know where they've come from. Maybe it doesn't feel that important to you right now, maybe you've never consciously thought about, but just ask an adopted child for whom their story of origin is foggy or has been avoided about how important knowing where one comes from is to them. It's critical. It's foundational at so many levels. Another category that our Jewish story makes quite clear to us is the importance of life. We are taught that there is nothing more important than life itself, so much so that any other law can be and should be violated in order to protect life. Being alive is in itself a holy act. Yet another category that we need to obtain certainty and clarity about is that we are living in a time of crisis, when holding on to life is more precarious than it has been for a long time, possibly ever. Scientific knowledge, which is entirely compatible with Jewish faith, is telling us that for our own benefit and for the benefit of others to whom we most definitely have an obligation, we need to take some very specific steps in order to save lives. We need to stay apart for the time being. This is a category that we need to find ourselves in, and ironically is the way that we demonstrate love in the age of COVID-19. The financial costs are great, the loneliness at times is hard to bear, but we have to commit ourselves to this. There is no gray space here. When we do find ourselves unavoidably occupying public spaces on occasion, we need to do whatever we can to protect ourselves from others and others from us, even from that which we might not yet know about ourselves. None of us is above becoming infected. None of us has the right to take life and well-being away from anyone else. May healing and a cure come completely and speedily in our days. May those who risk themselves on the front lines to serve humanity be blessed. May we remember our debt to them. And may all of us give thanks to the Creator of this mysterious life for every new day that we see. Shabbat Shalom.